Welcome to our lesson on events leading to the Civil War with a focus on the compromises and conflicts that actually led to the start of the fighting of the Civil War in the United States. For today, we are going to be doing some notes and following along on some key topics that led to the actual breakout and start to the fighting of the war. For today, your learning target is to identify the events that led to the U.S. Civil War. We'll be looking at 6. Obviously, you need your Chromebook, and then you are either going to be taking notes on your 2.1 Events of the Civil War kind of tree map. You can do this either through our CAMI assignment that's located in Schoology, or by taking paper and pencil notes with the chart that is available in the school supply table. So here we go. On your notes, you're going to see there are the different columns of topics. So you're just going to be writing in your notes below the topic we talk about. You can pause the video to get these notes down, or always rewind and come back and just fill in what you need to in your own words, or you can copy word for word, whatever is best for you. For this video, what is in blue font is the most important piece of information to get down. And again, as we go through, please answer the Edpuzzle questions. So when we're looking at the Civil War, we're going to try to figure out all the things that were done to try to not go to war. So wars don't just happen usually out of thin air. Usually there's a bunch of events that happen or things that people are upset about, and then the war breaks out. So in this case, there's a series of events, there's tension that's growing, especially around the enslavement of people and people trying to fight against that. And the fighting is so big that eventually our states are going to collide. So the 6 events we're going to focus on are the Missouri Compromise, the Compromise of 1850, the KansasNebraska Act, Bleeding Kansas, the Dred Scott case, and then the election of 1860 and how that led to the succession of 1861. If you're like, whoa, what are all these things? Don't worry, we're going to talk about them in detail moving forward. So have your notes out, and here we go. Our first event is the Compromise of 1820. As you can see in the map, all right, you can see there are different states that had different beliefs, which we've talked about in our characteristics of how to do things, how they make money, how society is set up, and just overall physical features that play a factor into how they live their lives in the North versus the South. So as states are being added, so as you can see over on the West Coast, there's all this land that is not designated for states yet. We know today we have 50 states, they have boundaries, they're organized, and that wasn't the case in 1820. So as they started to add states, they had to figure out what are the policies and rules going to be for each of the states. So for the Missouri Compromise, it admitted Missouri, so this new state of Missouri, that would allow enslaving people, but then they tried to keep it balanced, so then Maine, up here in the north, would not allow the enslavement of people, because that was the hot topic, all right? If we make new states, what are their rules and laws going to be? This set the precedent that they were going to try to have everything be equal. We know that equal does not always mean fair, but back then they're like, well, if we have one state that allows enslaving people and one that doesn't, then everyone will be happy. Now, is that going to work out? Probably not. But that set the tone for how they were going to continue to add states into the United States in the 1800s. So again, you want to write down what is in blue, pause the video if you need to keep writing. So we're now moving into our second column, our second topic, and that's the Compromise of 1850. For this, we're going all the way out west to California, so the state that's on the far west in green. So in the Compromise of 1850, it admitted California as a free state, and then said, hey, Utah and New Mexico, you get to decide whether or not you are going to allow the enslavement of people or not. All right, so they got to have a choice. So these 2 territories were open to allowing the enslavement of people, but California was not going to. Again, they're trying to figure out, like, if we just make a balance of it, then everyone will be happy, which, again, is not always going to work out. The Fugitive Slave Act in 1850 upset a lot of abolitionists. This act allowed slaveholders to capture people who ran away. So people that were trying to escape to freedom, to a better life, could be caught in a northern state and brought back down to the south. This led to widespread anger in the North and increased participation in rebellion and resistance movements such as the Underground Railroad. This made it so the divide between the North and the South got even bigger and tension got even higher. Our next topic is the KansasNebraska Act of 1854. This allowed citizens of Kansas and Nebraska to decide for themselves whether they'd be free or allow the enslavement of people in their states. People in the North were so upset because if you look at these territories, they're more in the North than the South, and this led to a breakout of violence. So following that, we have Bleeding Kansas. Bleeding Kansas happened in 1855. This is where Kansas became a battleground before the Civil War even broke out, as Northerners and Southerners fought each other over whether or not they should allow enslaving people. Radicals from both the North and the South went to Kansas to help fight and then place a vote. These were violent conflicts. Homes and farms were burned down, businesses destroyed, and of course there was unfair elections that were happening and how they were going to make this decision. Our last two topics are Lincoln's election and the South leaving. So Lincoln's election in 1860 was very controversial. There were 4 people that were running for president, and Lincoln was very popular in the North and disliked in the South. The thing that we don't always hear about Lincoln is Lincoln actually would allow slavery where it already existed, but he opposed it from getting bigger. So enslaving people, he said if it already was there, he was okay with keeping, but he wasn't going to allow it to get bigger. There were 10 southern states that didn't even put Lincoln on the ballot. Again, we're talking about unfair elections or elections that aren't the same across the board because Lincoln's name was not even on the ballot. Lincoln did end up winning the election, which the South was not happy about. So this led to the succession. Succession means to leave or to remove. So the southern states, you can see in this map here, they decided they were going to form their own country. They were going to leave the United States, and they were going to be called the Confederacy. So on April 12th, 1861, is when the war actually broke out, when this Southern Confederacy, this army, attacked at Fort Sumter. All right, so this breakout for the southern states leaving the United States, forming their own country, led to the actual attack and fighting of the Civil War. I hope that you've learned something new. I know this was a lot of information, so definitely go back, review your notes, pause, and get things filled in. And when you finish, I want you to think about what is something that you now know. This was a lot of information, but what sticks out to you from all these events, all these conflicts and compromises that they tried to make to avoid a war, but then a war actually broke out? So that goes in the star. In the circle, I want you to think about something that's still circling in your brain. What are you still curious about? Or what are you like, this doesn't make sense. I don't get what we're talking about here. So what's something that you're still thinking about, or you have a question about, or you want to know more about? That will go in the circle. Thank you guys so much for following along. I look forward to talking to you more about this soon.